The world never remembered the hill. It had no name, no monument, no mention in history books. Yet on a frozen night in Korea, dozens of young Americans bled and froze on that slope, believing it mattered, believing it would mean something. Among them was Sergeant Daniel Reed, 24 years old, from Kansas. He had survived 2 years of war already, but as he led his men up the snow-covered ridge, something in his gut told him this night would be different. The forgotten hill looked harmless, just a white mound against the dark sky. But Reed knew better. High ground was power. Whoever held it controlled the valley, and tonight they had orders. Hold at all costs, at all costs. The words gnawed at him, because on a hill like this the cost was always blood, and what none of them knew was that the hill would demand far more than blood. It would demand their very souls. The frozen march, the climb was brutal. Snow swallowed their boots, wind slashed their faces, rifles weighed heavy on tired shoulders. Reed's men staggered behind him, boys from Ohio, Texas, California, faces pale, eyes empty. Private Harris muttered, "Feels like we're marching into our graves." Reed didn't answer. He couldn't. The thought had already taken root in his mind. At the top, they dug shallow foxholes into frozen ground, their shovels sparking against rock-hard earth. Breath rose in clouds as they worked in silence. The valley below stretched wide and black, hiding whatever was coming. Reed crouched low, staring into the dark. He felt it, the waiting, the weight, the storm building beyond sight. Because the hill wasn't just cold, it was alive with silence, and silence always meant danger. The first signs hours passed. The men shivered in their holes, hugging rifles for warmth. Reed walked the line, whispering encouragement, but inside he felt the same fear they did. Then came the sound. Distant, faint like drums, boots crunching snow in rhythm. Movement, one soldier hissed. Reed raised his hand. Steady. Shadows rippled at the base of the hill. Figures, dozens, no hundreds, emerging from the black. The first shots cracked through the night. Rifles thundered, muzzle flashes lit the snow. The hill came alive with fire and screams. Reed shouted, "Hold the line! Don't give an inch!" The enemy surged upward, relentless. Bodies tumbled down the slope. Blood painted the snow black. But the first assault was only a test. The real storm had not yet begun. The waiting fire by dawn, silence returned. Smoke drifted across the ridge, mingling with fog. The men sat in stunned exhaustion, their faces grey, hands trembling. Private Collins whispered, "We can't take another wave." Reed forced strength into his voice. "We'll hold." "We always hold," but inside doubt clawed at him. Ammunition was low, food nearly gone, and the cold. It was worse than bullets, seeping into bones, stealing life with every breath. He looked at his men and wondered, how long before the hill claimed them without a single shot fired? Because sometimes the deadliest enemy is not the one charging with a rifle, it's the one waiting in the frost. The hallucinations? That night, the temperature dropped even lower. Men curled together, teeth chattering, eyes wide with fever. Some began to mutter nonsense, names of wives, children, hometown streets. Private Harris gripped Reed's arm. "You see them, don't you? Down there in the valley." "Lights," Reed squinted. "Nothing but darkness," but Harris insisted. "They're watching us." "They're already here." Reed felt a chill deeper than cold. Was it madness? Or had the hill begun whispering lies into their minds? Because in the silence of that hill even sanity could be stolen. The letter from home. Reed pulled a crumpled letter from his pocket, his sister's handwriting. He read it silently, lips moving. "Danny, come home soon. We're proud of you. Stay warm," he almost laughed. "Stay warm." On this hill, warmth was a myth. He folded the letter, pressing it against his chest. It was the only thing keeping him tethered to life, to memory, to the idea that home still existed. But even as he held it, he wondered, would anyone back home ever know what happened here on a nameless hill no map would mark? The wind howled across the ridge. Snow swirled like ghosts. Reed's men huddled, eyes wide, hearts pounding. Then from the valley the sound returned, boots, endless boots, marching in unison. Reed's stomach dropped. The first wave had been a shadow. This was the storm. He raised his rifle, voice hoarse but steady. "Get ready." And as the black tide rose against the hill once more, he realized the truth. The forgotten hill was about to earn its name. The second wave, the black tide surged again. Rifles cracked, machine guns rattled, the hill erupting in fire and screams. Sergeant Daniel Reed fired until his shoulder went numb, the recoil pounding like a hammer. Men fell around him, some silent, some crying out for mothers who could not hear. The enemy kept coming, boots digging into snow, bodies collapsing only to be replaced by more shadows. The forgotten hill shook with fury, a white slope painted red. Reed shouted above the chaos, "Hold the line! If we lose this hill, we lose everything!" But in his heart he knew the truth. They were already losing. And the worst part was not the enemy charging upward. It was what the hill itself was doing to his men. Cracks in the line. When the gunfire finally faded, the survivors slumped against their rifles. Faces pale and hollow, Private Collins whispered, "We can't do this again." "No," Reed snapped, "we can. We have to." But even as he spoke, he saw it, the flicker of despair in their eyes. Ammunition was running out. Water froze solid in canteens. Fingers turned black with frostbite. The hill wasn't just killing them with bullets, it was killing them with silence, with cold, with time, the desertion that night. In the thin glow of a lantern, Reed noticed a gap in the line. 2 men were missing, panic surged. He searched the trenches until he found the truth, footprints leading down the slope away from the hill. They had deserted. Reed's chest tightened. "If more follow, we're finished," Private Harris asked quietly. "What if they were right, Sarge? What if this hill isn't worth dying for?" Reed clenched his jaw. "Orders are orders, we hold. No matter what." But deep down, even Reed began to wonder, what was this hill really worth? Whispers of madness. The next day, fog rolled over the valley, muffling sound, hiding movement. The men sat in their foxholes, staring into the mist. Private Harris muttered, "They're out there." "I can hear them breathing," Reed snapped. "It's the wind." But then Collins began rocking back and forth, whispering names. Friends long dead, family miles away. Reed grabbed his shoulders. "Collins, get a grip!" Collins's eyes were wild. "Don't you hear them? The voices in the snow." Reed froze. He didn't want to admit it, but sometimes, late at night, he heard them too. Because the forgotten hill didn't just test bodies, it tested minds. The letter of doubt that night, Reed pulled out his sister's letter again. The words blurred in his vision. "Danny, come home soon. We're proud of you. Stay warm." He almost tore it apart. Stay warm? How could he, when men froze inches away? He stuffed it back into his pocket, whispering, "I can't come home. Not from here. Not from this hill." But a darker thought followed. Maybe no one will. The enemy's fire at dawn, the enemy opened fire from the valley. Not a charge, just constant harassing shots. Bullets whined past ears, slammed into dirt, cracked against helmets. The men flinched with every shot, nerves unraveling. Sleep became impossible. Hunger gnawed at them. Fear burrowed deep. Reed tried to keep them steady, but he felt it too. The hill wasn't just surrounded by enemies, it was surrounded by inevitability. And inevitability was a weapon no soldier could resist. The betrayal that night, Harris crawled to Reed's foxhole. His face was pale, lips trembling. "Sarge, someone's sending signals." Reed frowned. "What?" Harris pointed down the slope. In the fog, faint flashes of light blinked. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short Morse code. Someone was signaling the enemy. Reed's blood turned cold. "Who?" Harris's eyes flicked toward Collins's foxhole. Reed stared at him, disbelief warring with rage. Collins, the boy who was losing his mind, muttering voices in the snow. Was he also betraying them? And suddenly, Reed realized the enemy might already be inside his own line. The confrontation, Reed crawled to Collins's position. The boy was shivering, eyes wide, muttering nonsense. "Collins," Reed barked. "Were you signaling them?" Collins shook his head violently. No, it wasn't me. The voices told me not to." Reed grabbed his collar. "What voices?" Collins's teeth chattered. "The ones in the snow. They said the hill isn't ours. It belongs to them." Reed's stomach twisted. Was he lying? Or had the hill truly driven him mad? And on that ridge, madness was as deadly as betrayal. That night the fog thickened. The men huddled in silence, eyes darting, rifles clutched tight. Reed couldn't sleep. He couldn't stop thinking about Collins, about the flashing signals in the mist. And then, from somewhere on the slope, came the sound of boots crunching in the snow, slow, deliberate, getting closer. Reed raised his rifle, whispering to himself, "Please, let it be one of ours." The footsteps in the fog. The sound grew louder. boots crunching slowly through the snow, deliberate, steady, unhurried. Sergeant Daniel Reed gripped his rifle so tight his knuckles went white. Around him the men stirred, wide eyes searching the mist. "Password!" Reed shouted. No answer. "Just footsteps. Password!" He roared again, voice shaking. The fog shifted. A shadow emerged, then vanished again. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Reed's heart hammered. Was it the enemy? Or the sound grew louder, boots crunching slowly through the snow, deliberate, steady, unhurried. Sergeant Daniel Reed gripped his rifle so tight his knuckles went white. Around him the men stirred, wide eyes searching the mist. "Password!" Reed shouted. No answer. "Just footsteps. Password!" He roared again, voice shaking. The fog shifted. A shadow emerged, then vanished again. The footsteps stopped. Silence, one of their own gone mad. Because on that hill even silence could kill. "The phantom soldier," the men whispered frantically. Collins muttered, "It's them. The ones in the snow. They've come for us. Shut up!" Reed snapped. But a chill ran through his spine. He crawled forward, rifle raised, scanning the mist. Suddenly a figure appeared barely 10 feet away. "Helmet, rifle, American uniform. Identify yourself," Reed shouted. The figure froze, then bolted into the fog. The men opened fire, bullets shredding the night. When the smoke cleared, nothing remained. No body, no blood. Reed's throat tightened. Was it real? Or had the hill begun creating enemies of its own? A message in the snow at dawn. The fog lifted. The hill was quiet again, except for the bodies frozen from the previous assaults. Reed paced the ridge, his boots crunching ice, when something caught his eye. Marks in the snow near the line. He crouched low. Letters scratched clumsily into the frost. Leave or die. Reed's chest tightened. Who had carved it? The enemy in the night? Or one of his own men, driven mad? He wiped the message away before the others saw. But the words seared into his mind. Because sometimes the cruelest threats don't come from bullets, they come from within. Breaking down that evening, Collins snapped. He stood up in his foxhole, screaming at the valley, firing wildly into the dark. "Come and take me! I'm not afraid." Reed and Harris tackled him, dragging him down. Collins thrashed, tears streaming down his frostbitten face. "Don't you hear them? They're already here." Reed slapped him hard. "Pull yourself together!" But Collins only sobbed, whispering, "The hill. The hill is cursed." Reed's hands trembled. He wanted to deny it. But hadn't he begun to feel the same? Because even leaders can't silence the voices inside their own heads. The last rations, by the third day their rations were gone. Men chewed frozen leather, anything to trick their bodies into believing they were fed. Private Harris muttered, "We're ghosts already." Reed forced himself to sound strong. Reinforcements will come, but inside doubt ate him alive. They had no radio contact, no sign of relief, no word from command. The forgotten hill lived up to its name. They had been abandoned. And abandoned men are the most dangerous of all. The mutiny. That night Harris and 2 others confronted Reed. Their eyes burned with desperation. "This is suicide," Harris hissed. "We're leaving." "With or without you?" Reed stepped forward, blocking their path. "If you go, you'll be cut down in the valley. Better than freezing here like rats." Harris snapped, rifles raised, not at the enemy but at Reed. His chest tightened. He had fought the enemy for years, but never his own men. Because sometimes the deadliest battles are fought without a single shot fired at the enemy. The leader's choice. Reed's finger hovered over his trigger. One wrong move and brothers would kill brothers. Finally he lowered his rifle. "If you want to go, go." "But the hill won't let you leave," Harris sneered. "We'll see." They slipped into the dark, vanishing down the slope. The men left behind stared at Reed with hollow eyes, silently asking, "Will we be next?" Reed whispered to himself, "God help them." The return hours later, shots rang out in the valley. Screams echoed. Then silence. At dawn, Reed saw the truth. Harris and the deserters lay sprawled in the snow at the base of the hill, riddled with bullets. The men went pale, whispering prayers. Collins muttered, "The hill doesn't let anyone leave." Reed's stomach turned. The hill had claimed them too, just as he warned. And with every body that fell, the hill demanded more. That night, as Reed huddled in his foxhole, he pulled out his sister's letter again. His hands shook too violently to read it. He whispered, "I can't keep them together. I can't even keep myself together." Then, From the valley, the drums began again, boots in unison, hundreds of them marching closer. Reed raised his rifle with numb hands, staring into the dark, and in that frozen silence, he finally understood. The forgotten hill wasn't just a battle. It was a grave waiting for them all. The boots thundered louder, hundreds in unison shaking the valley floor. Sergeant Daniel Reed's men clutched their rifles with white knuckles, eyes wide in terror. "Steady," Reed barked, though his own voice trembled. Then, like a wave, the enemy surged upward. Rockets lit the night. Machine guns roared. Grenades burst in sprays of snow and fire. The forgotten hill exploded in chaos. Reed fired blindly, ears ringing, heart pounding. Men screamed. The hill shook under the weight of blood and steel. And Reed realized this was not an attack. This was an execution. Brothers in Fire Private Collins, delirious and shaking, suddenly stood tall, firing wildly. "They can't have the hill." They can't. A burst of bullets cut him down. His body tumbled backward into the snow, still clutching his rifle. Reed shouted his name, but it was swallowed by the storm. Another soldier, young Miller from Ohio, charged forward, throwing his last grenade before collapsing, chest torn open. The hill consumed them one by one, demanding sacrifice after sacrifice. Reed gritted his teeth, whispering, "Not one more." But the hill did not bargain, it only took. Frozen courage through smoke and screams, Reed saw the enemy climbing higher, bayonets flashing. His men were breaking. He stood, exposing himself, rifle raised high. "With me! Hold this ground!" For a moment the men rallied. They fired, shouted, clawed at hope. The ridge echoed with defiance, but ammunition ran dry. Rifles clicked empty. One by one, soldiers dropped their weapons, eyes hollow. Reed's own rifle jammed. He hurled it aside, pulling his knife instead. Because when guns fail, courage is the last weapon left. The cold within. The battle raged for hours. Snow turned black with blood. The enemy pressed relentlessly, but the hill refused to fall quickly. It demanded every breath, every drop of strength. Reed staggered, knife in hand, slashing, punching, screaming. His body was numb, but his mind burned with one thought: don't let them erase us. And yet, even as he fought, frost spread through his veins. His lips turned blue, his vision blurred. The cold wasn't just outside anymore, it was inside him. And when the cold moves within, even courage can freeze. The last stand by dawn, only Reed and 2 soldiers remained. The others lay silent, frozen or bleeding in the snow. The enemy regrouped below, preparing one final charge. Reed leaned against the trench wall, breath ragged. He knew what was coming. "Boys," he whispered, "this is it." The 2 nodded, eyes hollow but steady. Reed pulled out his sister's letter, pressing it against his heart. Then he tore a scrap from the page, scribbling words with a bloody pencil stub. "If anyone finds this, know we fought. Know we held. Know we were not forgotten." He stuffed the note deep into the earth beneath him. Because sometimes survival isn't living. It's leaving behind a voice. The collapse, the final charge began. Hundreds swarmed the slope, shouting, firing, throwing grenades. Reed and his men unleashed their last bullets, then knives, then fists. The hill shook with thunder. Explosions tore the trenches apart. One soldier fell screaming. The other was bayoneted through the chest. Reed stood alone, bloodied, knife raised. He roared into the storm. One man against a tide, the enemy surrounded him. A rifle butt slammed his head. The world went black. The forgotten silence. When Reed woke, he was on his back, snow drifting into his face. The hill was silent now. The battle was over. The enemy moved among the bodies, checking for life. Reed closed his eyes, pretending to be dead. He felt boots pass him. A rifle barrel nudged his side, then moved on. Hours later, silence returned. The enemy was gone, leaving only corpses frozen in grotesque shapes. Reed rolled onto his stomach, coughing blood. He looked around. The hill was littered with his men, faces pale, eyes staring into nothing. He was the last. And in that moment, he realized the hill had claimed its name. Forgotten. Epilogue. Years later, decades after the war, farmers found bones while digging near a nameless ridge. Rusted helmets, rotted boots, scraps of letters pressed into frozen earth. Historians would argue over maps, trying to identify the place. But the locals called it simply the Hill of Ghosts. Among the remains, one fragment survived, the torn scrap Reed had buried. Faded but still legible. "We were not forgotten." And in those words, the forgotten hill lived on. Because some battles are lost on the ground, but won in memory. The forgotten hill had no name, no monument. But in the silence of snow, if you listen closely, some say you can still hear it. Boots crunching, voices whispering, rifles clicking empty. And the question that lingers is simple. How many more hills like this were buried by history, left without names, left without voices? If Sergeant Reed's stand on the forgotten hill moved you, don't let his voice vanish into silence. Subscribe to the Soldier's Journal for more untold stories of the Korean War. Like this video if you believe their sacrifices must never be erased, and share it so others remember the hills, the men, and the courage the world tried to forget.